about what actually is somatic healing. So the first thing is I want you guys to understand that when you are in an incident where your body doesn't feel safe, right? And for one person, the incident could be fine, and the other person could feel really traumatized in the incident, right? It doesn't matter whether consciously you're like, there was nothing to be scared about or not. If your body felt unsafe in the situation and you had a visceral response, right? Your heart rate increased, maybe there's like knots in your stomach, maybe you felt really nauseous, maybe you were shaking, hyperventilating, like a panic attack kind of situation. It doesn't matter what it was, right? There was some kind of visceral response. But I also want to mention that the visceral response can be numbing out and it can be freeze, right? There can be like a disassociation response as well, and that's still a trauma response. When there is a response like that, in any situation, whether you remember it or not, we will have some kind of coping mechanism, obviously, to deal with it, but it doesn't mean that you've actually dealt with it. It means that you are coping with it, right? It was a coping mechanism. It was not a healing mechanism. Because for most of us, if not all of us, when we are in that initial situation that caused this trauma, for like an umbrella word, right? There was some kind of traumatic response in our body. When we're in that kind of situation, we aren't really in the position to fully finish the trauma cycle and get our bodies back to a place of neutrality and release all that emotion and that energy and that fear and naturally come back to safety. Not force our bodies to come back to safety, but our bodies released all of the fear. Let's just use that word. Our bodies released all the fear and it's come back to neutral. Most of us don't have that situation. So what this means is that you then need to do somatic healing so that your body can get out of being in this constant trauma cycle, so that you don't have all of these blocks still held in your body, causing you to have these weird beliefs, to feel like you can't trust anybody, to always be protecting yourself, to, feel like petrified of vulnerability and communication, so that you aren't bloated all the time, so that you don't have panic attacks, so that you're not all these other things that happen as a result of trauma. Right? But what I want you guys to understand when it comes to my somatic healing is that because I involve the brain and the body, you are consciously aware of what you're releasing and you're choosing to release it, which I truly think is a very, very important component, because if you don't know what you're releasing, then you're not releasing it, right? There is a component where you have to choose to release something so that you can consciously put it in the past and choose to not act from that place anymore. So when you're just doing mindset work, or you're just doing body work, like let's say kinesiology or like somatic release massage, they're fucking great. No, not kinesiology, sorry, Reiki. They're great, right? Like getting a somatic release massage, yes, that's fantastic. But the missing piece of just doing somatic work without there being some kind of connection from the brain, right? So somebody else is releasing it for you, not you releasing it for yourself. That's the best way to put it. When somebody else is releasing your trauma versus you releasing your own trauma, right? And I guide you to release your own trauma. The missing piece very often is that you're not aware of what you're releasing. You don't get to be like, oh my God, I finally realized why I do this. You don't get to have that sense of like self-validation and like the aha that so many of us need to change our actions as well. And I also know from my own experience and from doing this with clients for so many years that it is powerful to know what you are releasing. All right, well, this is going to be a long one, whatever, fuck it. And part of what is so powerful about knowing what you're releasing is because then from there, you can then change your action, change your mindset, and choose to leave that in the past. If you don't know what you're releasing, if you don't know what pain you are feeling, there's a missing piece. And that missing piece affects the integration. It affects the embodiment. It affects the action, right? They're kind of all combined. The integration, the embodiment, the action. That's what it affects. So my somatic healing is using your brain and your body because I'm guiding you to heal somatically. The only time really that you don't know what you're healing is like, that happens sometimes, it's breath work, or sometimes people will like feel trauma and not fully understand what it's about. That's okay. You don't have to understand everything. That's not what I'm saying, right? You don't have to understand everything, but it's powerful in knowing that you can understand everything when you're doing brain and body combined.